Hello, buddy. Welcome back to Tin Man Score Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'm kicking off my Midnight Tales reactions for you guys. And the first video I'm reacting to is 6 Scary True Appalachia Horror Stories. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, boot the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road in the bag, shall we? Okay, here we go.
We'd all been pretty lucky where I live. Pandemic hadn't really hit us hard back then, and while there were still a few restrictions in place, we had a lot more freedom than most people I knew.
Sounds good.
You were allowed to form a bubble with one other household, and travel around the region was fine. So my family and another we were close to figured it'd be the perfect time to get out of town for a few days. We booked 2 cabins next to each other in a quiet wooded area by the water. Just a relaxing little break before the weather turned cold.
Well, I'm glad that they were able to leave their house with a neighbor of theirs and have a lovely vacation together in the mountains before, like he said, the weather got bad. But if they had tight restrictions back when the pandemic happened, they wouldn't be able to do this at all. But anyway, let's continue.
It was one of those early autumn weekends where everything feels just peaceful. The trees were turning. The air was crisp, but not cold, and it felt like the whole world had slowed down a bit. We barely saw anyone else, just a few empty cabins scattered nearby, and the only sound other than us was a dog barking now and then off in the distance. We weren't even sure which direction it was coming from, just that it wasn't too far off. The last night there, my kid decided he wanted to sleep over in the other cabin with the children from the other family. Around 11 or so, he called over asking if I could bring him something he forgot. It was pitch black out. No lights out there except whatever we had with us. So I grabbed a flashlight and headed over.
I'm glad that this parent was okay with him going to spend the night with the neighbor's kids, but not to try to be mean. That kid already should have remembered to bring that specific item. But yeah, something about being in the mountains where the air is crisp and seeing the leaves changing colors, it's breathtaking to say the least.
It was just a short walk between the cabins, and everything was quiet. On the way back, I heard a sound that caught me off guard. Not loud or sudden, just unexpected. It was a whistle. Not some bird sound or wind through the trees, but a very deliberate kind of whistle, like the kind someone makes to call their dog. I paused, shined the flashlight around, didn't see anyone.
First of all, I'm glad that these cabins are at walking distance from each other, but that would be weird hearing a sharp whistle like somebody was calling for their pet. And it's supposed to be only families in that area, so why would somebody else be in that spot? That's kind of suspicious. Especially when a pandemic was going on. This other guy shouldn't be close to him.
And figured maybe the barking dog we'd heard earlier was out again. It didn't seem like a big deal. Not long after I got back, my son changed his mind and wanted to sleep in our cabin after all. So this time, my husband and I both walked over to get him and his things. On the way back, that same whistle started again. It sounded like it was coming from ahead of us on the trail and moving slowly away, like someone walking down the dirt road and whistling every now and then. My husband shrugged and said it must be someone out looking for their dog. That explanation made sense in the moment, so we didn't think much of it. But once we were back inside, the sound didn't stop. It kept coming and going, never too frequent, just every couple minutes or so. Sometimes it was far off, then closer again, like whoever it was had circled back around. You'd hear it get louder as it seemed to pass by our cabin, then it would fade again in the opposite direction, over and over like that, for what must have been more than an hour. Eventually, my husband went up to the loft to sleep, and I stayed downstairs packing up a few things for the trip home the next morning.
Okay, thank God the kid changed their mind and said they want to sleep in their cabin, and both parents went over there and got them. Because if I kept hearing a whistling noise that was coming from the distance, I would have just said, no, you're staying here because I don't know what's going on out there. And if it's somebody that causes harm, I don't want you to get hurt. But that would drive me nuts. The person kept on whistling.
My son was asleep in the little room by the front door, and we'd left his window cracked open since the night air was still kind of warm. I was tidying up near that window when the next whistle came, and this time it wasn't far away at all. It was loud, like right outside the window. No mistaking it. I froze for a second, then rushed to the front door and threw on the porch light, fully expecting someone to be standing there. But there was nothing. No footsteps, no rustling in the woods. I took a few steps out with my flashlight, but didn't see a thing. And honestly, my gut told me not to go any further. So I went back inside, locked every door and window, and made sure all the blinds were closed. I didn't want to leave my son alone downstairs after that, so I grabbed a blanket and settled in on the couch with a book. But the whistling didn't stop. It would come and go, again and again, and every time I'd try to rationalize it. Maybe it was a bird, maybe some random forest sound, but nothing quite fit. It had that unmistakable human quality to it, and it wasn't consistent like a machine or a device. It changed a little each time, like someone was intentionally doing it. Sometime around 1:30 in the morning, my husband suddenly got out of bed and started getting dressed. I asked what he was doing, and he said, "I'm going to find out who the hell has been whistling all night." I couldn't believe it. As curious as I was, the idea of him going out there freaked me out.
I mean, I would agree with him because if it's going nonstop while you're trying to sleep, I would get up and get dressed and go outside and either yell at the top of my lungs saying, whoever's doing that, you need to stop right now. I'm getting kind of annoyed now. Or bring some sort of weapon with you and go confront this person. I can see his wife being scared because he's going out there and don't know who or what is making that noise. He might get attacked.
I practically begged him not to, and thankfully, he decided to stay inside.
Thank God.
I stayed awake for a while longer, listening to the same pattern repeat again and again, until I eventually passed out on the couch. The next morning, everything was still and quiet again. Sunlight was coming through the blinds like nothing ever happened. I opened the door half expecting to see boot prints or anything really, but there was nothing unusual outside. We walked over to the other cabin with our coffee to talk to our friends, and weirdly enough, they hadn't heard a single thing. Not even once. Which was strange, considering that if someone had been walking back and forth whistling for hours, they would have passed right by their place too. When we checked out, I asked the woman at the desk if she'd heard anything like that before. She just gave me a confused look and said no, not that she knew of. After we got home, I spent way too long looking up bird calls and animal noises to try to explain what we heard. But nothing sounded even close to what had echoed through those trees that night, circling our cabin over and over again for hours.
I knew that when you asked the receptionist at the office about hearing anything, she'd probably be like, no, because she would be messing with her phone or working on the computer and not even paying attention to any outside noises. But it's kind of freaky that you can't even find any noise online that would match whatever you heard. So that tells you it might have been of a bird or some other animal that you just don't know of yet. But that is really creepy, and I'm glad that they did not stay an extra night there to find out what was making that noise, and they're home safe and sound now. So let's get to story number 2, shall we?
This happened to me late last summer, around the beginning of September.
Okay.
I'm originally from a really tiny mountain town. One of those places where if you sneeze in the grocery store, 10 people ask if you're okay, and 2 of them are your cousins. Everyone kind of knows each other, or at least knows your family.
I always heard things about that. It seemed like the mountain folks are always friendly and just want to keep check on everybody to make sure everybody's healthy, and that's good. You can't find that out of any city folk nowadays.
I'd already started my junior year at a university about 3 hours from home, so I wasn't around much, but I still kept in touch with a couple of people from high school, mainly Mac and Devin. Now, I hadn't heard from Devin in a bit, but one day I got a message from Mac letting me know that Devin's dad had been killed in a car crash.
Oh, geez.
It was sudden, one of those highway accidents that you hear about, but never expect to hit that close to home.
I'm sorry to hear that, especially since it was his friend's dad. That's a tearjerker right there.
Since Devin's family had moved to our town when we were teenagers, she didn't have much extended family nearby. Mac went back for the funeral, and I planned to come up after my Friday classes to keep Devin company for the evening. We figured it might be good for her to just be around people who cared about her. That night, the three of us hung out at Mac's place. We played some games, watched a dumb movie none of us paid attention to, and just kind of tried to distract Devin for a while. Honestly, considering why we were all there, it wasn't a bad night. I left a little after midnight, just planning on heading back to my parents' place to crash. Mac's house was only a little over a mile away from mine, and in our part of the state, that drive's usually pitch black, all curves and no lights. It's the kind of road where you don't want to meet another car going too fast, let alone anything weird. Anyway, I pulled out of his driveway and had barely gotten past the first curve when I had to slam my brakes. There was a beat-up white sedan half jammed into a ditch, partly sticking into my lane. I swerved, heart pounding, and stopped maybe 100 feet past it.
Yeah, I'd be wondering, why is that car sitting right there in the ditch and don't have any emergency flashers on? Because if I just came up on it all of a sudden, I'd be scared to death of hitting it. But I guarantee you that somebody's probably got that car set there as a decoy trap to make people jump out of their car to investigate, and they probably come out and jump them. I don't want to spoil anything, so let's just see what happens next.
Out of nowhere, this guy starts waving his arms and walking toward me. I hesitated, like really hesitated. I should have kept going and called for help when I got home, but for some dumb reason I got out to check if he was okay. The front end of his car looked wrecked, like he'd hit something solid, maybe one of those rocky slopes on the side of the road. It was hard to see anything in the dark, but from the red light of my taillights, I saw him getting closer. He looked rough, probably in his late 40s, shorter than me but built like he'd done heavy labor most his life. His voice was strangely flat, no urgency or panic, just this weird, quiet tone. He said he'd tried calling his brother who lived nearby, but couldn't get through. I offered to call someone for him, but he got weirdly defensive and said no cops, just needed help getting his car out or a ride to his brother's house.
That's a red flag right there. If he says no cops, he just needs to ride to his brother's house, something sketchy. He probably wants you to let him get in your car, and once you're on the road, he'll probably pull out a weapon to tell you to stop the car, rob you, and take your vehicle. I'm guessing that's what's going to happen right here, but I don't know for sure.
Something felt off isn't even the word. It was more like everything about the interaction rubbed me wrong, but I didn't have anything specific to point at. Still, I didn't want him getting in my car without me knowing what was going on.
Yes.
So I played along and said I'd give him a ride. The second he sat in my car, I regretted it. The man reeked, like sweat and rot and something else that made my eyes water.
Oh.
He was filthy, like he'd rolled around in a garage and then never showered. Flies buzzed around him. The light from inside the car showed his hands were stained with grease, and his shirt had more holes than fabric.
I don't want to be mean, but I would not say anything to him about his appearance. He knows how he looks, but I'll be wondering, why has he not taken a shower? Because there's no way I'll be letting people that have a stench that's worse than a skunk sit in my vehicle.
I tried not to gag and pulled away, turning onto the road he said led to his brother's place. He kept asking me questions, where I lived, what I did, what my name was. I dodged every personal detail I could. His voice stayed totally flat, no expression, just that weird monotone that made it sound like he was either heavily medicated or seriously not all there. I was seriously starting to think this was a mistake when he started running his fingers along my dashboard and muttered something that nearly made me slam the brakes again. I'd kill to have a car like this. He said it so casually, like he was commenting on the weather. I didn't say anything back, just kept driving. We passed my sister's boyfriend's house, which I was going to use as a safe out, but the place was dark and empty. Nobody home. And then, surprise, surprise, the guy says his brother's house isn't just a mile away from the car like he said. It's actually a mile from where we currently were. He was clearly making it up as we went. We finally reached this narrow gravel road, one of those one-lane paths that shoots up the side of a hill, barely wide enough for a single car. He told me to turn up it, that his brother lived about a mile up there. But everything in me screamed no.
Yeah, don't do it. I would just turn near that road and say, I'm sorry, I got to get somewhere, but I hope you get to your brother's house, okay? And see if he could get him out of the car real quick before he decides to snap and attack him.
There were no lights, no houses, just woods and silence. I put my foot down and told him we weren't going any further. He started insisting, getting pushy. I looked around my car for anything I could use if things got physical. The only thing in reach was an ice scraper I'd left in the floorboard from winter. A cheap plastic thing, but it had a sharp edge. I picked it up, held it in my lap, and told him one more time to get out. He hesitated, then slowly opened the door. Right before he got out, he turned to me with this eerie grin. His teeth were yellow and uneven, like he hadn't seen a toothbrush in decades, and said, "Please?" But the way he said it sounded mocking, not desperate. I told him no. He finally stepped out and closed the door, but before I could pull away, he leaned down into the window one last time. "I really like your car," he said, then slammed the door and stepped back. I drove off immediately, heart racing, not even caring that I had to go the wrong way to turn around. When I came back down the road, I slowed a little to see where he'd gone. He wasn't heading up the gravel road at all. He was walking back toward the main road, the same direction I'd be going.
Yep, I knew it. He don't have a brother that lives up there. He just wanted you to go up there just so he can kill him and take his car and dump his body up there somewhere. Oh man, thank God he got him out of his car and took off, because if he didn't, he would not be here telling the story.
His wrecked car was still sitting in the same spot when I passed it again. I didn't stop, just went straight home, locked the doors, and laid there in bed, staring at the ceiling. I have no idea what he really wanted, but it wasn't a ride to his brother's house.
Yeah, I already figured that much. Like I said, he probably wanted to take you up there, get rid of you, and the car was his. But let's say he was lucky and avoided a major catastrophe.
It was during my final semester at college in the US that I decided to check something off my bucket list. A solo hike on part of the Appalachian Trail.
Sounds good.
I've always been more of a mountain guy than a beachgoer, and while I've trekked across plenty of ranges in Europe, the Appalachian Mountains had this weird kind of pull for me. There's a kind of age to them that feels ancient, almost like they're watching you back.
That's true. I mean, some of the woods over in Europe look older than our woods, not only in the Appalachian Trail, but in any part of the U.S. They just have a certain charm about them. Almost looks like you're walking through a forest of storybooks, you know. But I can agree on one thing with him. I'm not a huge beach goer myself. I like going to the beach, but mountains is always my go-to.
I'd read a ton of hiking guides and way too many creepy stories about the area. Those didn't scare me off, though. If anything, they made me more curious. Since my spring break didn't line up with my girlfriend's or my friends' schedules, I figured I'd go alone. Probably not the smartest idea in hindsight, but I was set on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't go hiking on a trail by myself, no. Because you never know if you're walking and then you run up on some weirdo person that might want to end up kidnapping you or kill you. Or you might come across a scene where you found somebody mutilated. So if you're going to plan on hiking on the Appalachia Trail or any trail, I would recommend carrying some sort of knife, bear spray, a thick walking stick, because you never know who or what you will come across in the woods that might be life threatening to you.
I planned out a route starting near Bryson City, following the Tuckasegee River to the Nolan Creek trailhead, and making my way toward Clingman's Dome before picking up the Appalachian Trail for about a week. I brought all the essentials: bear spray, pepper spray, a knife, an axe for chopping wood, and enough food and water to keep me going. Everything went smoothly for the first few days.
That's good.
The views were absolutely stunning, and the people I passed were all polite in that quiet hiker kind of way.
So far, so good. I forgot to mention the axe, because even if you're going to use it to chop firewood, that would be a good self-defense weapon if somebody came way too close for comfort to you. You could threaten them with the axe and then they move on. But anyway, let's continue.
But on the third night, something changed. That evening, I'd made camp like usual, set up about 150 feet from the trail. Nothing too remote, just enough to feel like I had some privacy. But as I was cooking dinner, I started to feel unsettled, like I wasn't completely alone. It wasn't fear exactly, more like this annoying awareness, like your brain won't stop reminding you that you're exposed. I brushed it off and went to bed. But before sunrise, I woke up again, wide awake, heart thudding, absolutely sure that someone or something was nearby. The woods were silent. No birds, no rustling, just stillness and wind. It made my skin crawl. I stayed in my tent until daylight, packed up quickly, and moved on. That day I hiked like normal, but the feeling didn't go away. I'd catch myself stopping abruptly, trying to hear if anyone was behind me. Once or twice, I swear I heard faint footsteps that stopped just after mine did. That messed with me more than I wanted to admit.
Okay, I'll be a little bit concerned right now, because I'll be thinking, okay, somebody is following and trying to keep up pace with me. So if you stop, they might end up jumping you and attacking you. You keep hearing them, run quickly.
When I set up camp that night, I stuck closer to the trail. I figured if something did happen, I'd rather have someone stumble across me than be completely out of sight. Dinner was short. I ate half of it sitting in my tent, too uneasy to enjoy the night air. At some point, while lying in my sleeping bag and listening to the quiet outside, I heard it. A sharp knock, like wood hitting wood. Then silence. After what felt like forever, another knock, louder. It didn't sound like a falling branch or anything natural. I sat up, flicked on my flashlight inside the tent, and held my knife tight. My heart was racing. I even tried yelling, told whoever was out there that I was armed and not in the mood for games. I hoped that would scare them off. It didn't. Instead, the knocking started again, this time from another direction, opposite the first sound, which meant either this was someone messing with me and moving fast, or more than one person was out there. I didn't sleep much that night. I dozed off sometime after 4 a.m. and woke up with the sun already up. When I stepped out, I didn't see a single person, not even a footprint that stood out. It was like nothing had happened, but I knew what I'd heard. The rest of the hike was more of the same. Every night there'd be more knocks, sometimes just one, other times several from different sides of my camp. A couple of times I thought I heard someone humming, really faint, like someone singing under their breath way out in the trees. I never saw anyone, not once. But every day I kept feeling like I was being followed, and I couldn't get rid of that sense no matter how many miles I walked. When I finally got home and told my girlfriend about it, she told me it was probably all in my head. And sure, maybe it was. I never saw anything. But even now, weeks later, I'll wake up at night and feel like I'm back in that tent, knife in hand, waiting to hear that first knock in the dark again.
Yeah, that would be creepy just to experience while camping in the Appalachian Trail. But if you're that far into like the wilderness area, I wouldn't think it's nobody pulling a prank on you with all the tree knockings. I'm thinking it's probably two Bigfoots that were eyeballing you earlier. And once you said that you have a knife and want to play games, they were probably signaling back and forth to each other saying, "What are we going to do?" But luckily, they decided to leave you alone.
I was never the kid who stayed indoors growing up. Video games were fun, sure, but the woods? That was the real playground. Me and my best friend basically lived out there once school was out, especially during summer. As we got older, our little kid forts turned into real camping spots. And by the time we graduated high school, it felt like the woods were just an extension of our backyard. That last summer before we went off to college, we pretty much made it our mission to find a new place to camp each week. There was this one weekend that sticks out more than any other. We hiked deeper than usual, past all our usual landmarks, until we stumbled across this really peaceful clearing. It was wide open, a little ringed with trees, and the ground was soft enough to pitch the tent comfortably. We had all our usual stuff with us: tent, food, weed, firewood. And the plan was just to chill, get a little high, and play this beat up old Monopoly board we always dragged around. Now, a little about my buddy. The dude's basically a walking plant encyclopedia. His whole family's made up of forest rangers and park workers, so he's the kind of guy who could sniff a tree and tell you its Latin name.
Well, that can be handy because if you guys needed something to eat real quick, but you didn't bring nothing with you, he'll know, okay, which plant poisonous or not.
He'd camp solo all the time and never blink. Me? Not so much. I love nature, but once the sun dips, I'm constantly convincing myself that I'm not being watched. Which, yeah, sounds silly. But it's a weird instinct I could never fully ignore.
No, I wouldn't make fun of you for that because the woods can get really creepy at nighttime. And if it's just pitch black out there and you didn't bring no flashlight, it'll be hard to navigate through all the trees and see if you're not going to bump into any one of them.
I was always fine when I had someone with me, though. And this time, I had him. So we're a few hours into the night, fire's going strong, and we're both laughing, trading dumb stories, just passing the time. He's sitting in this tiny fold-up camp stool loading up a makeshift bong, and I'm next to the fire snapping little branches to toss in. That's when the breeze hit. It wasn't just a wind. It had this sharp, almost focused push to it, like it cut right through the clearing with purpose. The flames danced low for a second, and in that brief pause, both of us just froze. No word, no movement, just silence. Then we heard it. From somewhere just across the fire, near the tree line, there were footsteps. Not casual hiking ones. These were spaced out weird, like someone sprinting and stopping, then walking, then sprinting again. It kept looping like that, all concentrated in one patch of brush. It didn't make sense. It wasn't some deer or animal. The rhythm was all wrong, too deliberate. Then everything went quiet again. No wind, no movement, just that crushing silence. I didn't see anything, but I knew something was crouched right there watching us. I stayed crouched, half frozen, staring dead ahead. Then my buddy whispered, "Hey man," and the way he said it, like he was trying not to lose it, snapped everything into focus. I hadn't felt scared until I heard him scared. That did it. This wasn't just a weird night in the woods anymore. This was something else. My body locked up, like I wasn't even controlling my breathing anymore. After what felt like forever, he slowly tossed some leaves onto the fire. When they hit, the fire dipped low, and we were in total darkness for half a second. It was probably the longest half second of my life.
Oh man, why would you do that? Because if the flames did not pick up and burn them leaves to make the fire ignite, I'd be like, great. Now we don't have no source of light in this pitch black woods. And whoever or whatever was out there will have a field advantage.
Then, whoosh, the flames popped up and lit everything again. We kept throwing on leaves, twigs, anything to keep it roaring. I remember keeping my eyes on the exact same spot, just waiting for movement. But whatever was there didn't budge. It stayed like that for maybe an hour. No sounds, no steps, no rustling, until finally we heard it walk off. Real slow, heavy. But what got me wasn't even the footsteps leaving. It was realizing that the weird smell we'd both been ignoring was gone too. It had crept in slowly, like rotting eggs or some industrial chemical. And when it left, everything suddenly smelled clean again. Neither of us slept properly that night. He didn't lie down once. I maybe dozed off for a few minutes with my head resting on my knees. We didn't talk much until the next morning. We just packed up and made the walk back without saying a word. Even now, we'll bring it up every once in a while, and it still gives us both that weird, tight feeling in our chests. My friend hasn't camped out there alone since, and trust me, before that night, I don't think anything would have scared him off.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if you had a encounter with a Bigfoot out there, but he was hiding really good because he said he smelled like a bad stench of rotten eggs. They're known to be having smelly armpits. But yeah, I wouldn't blame you if the next morning came. I'll be packing up and leaving quick because I don't want to have a run in with anything that was responsible for that stench. They should consider themselves lucky.
Back when my husband and I were still settling into our new place, a quiet little farm tucked away in rural Appalachia, we had a lot of errands to run to get things up and running. This was a couple winters ago, and since propane heat was the only reliable option out there, we had to make a trip to one of the local supply stores in town to grab a tank. Neither of us had ever lived that deep in the country before, so everything was still kind of new and charming in its own way.
Yeah, that's the bad thing about living out in the far country or in the mountains like that is that you probably won't have no access to like a Walmart or Food Line or any other big chain store to go find the things you need to run a farm. So you have to go to like a supply store that will pretty much have everything and anything you need. And propane seems to be the way to heat up houses and buildings out there quickly without getting a lot of firewood together.
You know, folks waving at you on the road, small talk with strangers, the whole deal. We were in the checkout line just minding our business when this older guy walked into the store. I'd say he was in his late 50s, maybe early 60s. He immediately made eye contact with us, which isn't that unusual in a small town, but something about his expression was intense, like he wasn't just noticing us, but studying us. He wandered over to the clothing section, picked up a women's shirt, random as hell, then came back and got right in line behind us. And I don't mean in line like a normal person. I mean right behind us, close enough that I could feel his breath brushing against the back of my neck. Trying not to make it awkward, I smiled politely and said something like, "Good morning," hoping he'd realize he was standing a little too close. No such luck. Instead, he lit up like I'd invited him into a full-on conversation. He started out friendly enough, talking about the cold weather, how slow the line was, and some story about picking up his great aunt from the airport later that day. But then, he started asking questions that didn't really belong in a 5-minute checkout line conversation. Where are y'all from? Do you live nearby? How old are you two?
Okay, yeah, that'll be a bunch of red flags. I mean, it's okay to talk to people every once in a while, even though you don't know them personally. But if they start asking personal questions like that, I'll be kind of weirded out and be like, okay, let's hurry up and get through this checkout line before he gets annoyed that we're not answering his questions.
We both looked young for our ages, so maybe he thought we were just out of high school or something. Either way, it was starting to get weird. When we got to the counter, I tried to wrap things up by saying, "Have a nice day," and moving on. But the second the cashier started explaining the propane pricing, the man just exploded. He started yelling at this poor teenage employee, saying the prices were outrageous and that it was unfair to young newlyweds like us. He kept pushing it like he was on our side, but it felt more like he was trying to stir something up. Then he turned to us and said, "I've got a 100-pound tank at my place I'm not even using. Y'all can have it, free. Just come with me to pick it up." My husband, being the polite guy he is, thanked him but said we'd pass. The man didn't let it go. "Come on, it's just 20 minutes from here. I've actually got 2 tanks. You can take both." My husband again turned him down.
Yeah, but if you keep turning him down, he's going to keep on pushing the subject. And I bet you he don't even have no tanks. He's just doing that just so he can lure that couple to his house. And I hate to imagine what he has in mind, too.
That's when the guy added, "We'd have to go now, though. I've got to be at the airport in a couple hours." It wasn't until we were home later that something clicked. He mentioned needing to pick up his aunt and leave for the airport in 2 hours. That didn't add up. Anyway, I decided I'd had enough and said, "No thank you," with a tone that made it clear we weren't interested. The man didn't argue. He just dropped whatever he had in his hands and walked out. Seemed like he was annoyed more than anything. But a minute later, as we were walking to the propane refill station outside, we saw him again. He'd pulled up in a beat-up pickup truck, parked right by us, and got out like nothing had happened. He started pushing the tanks again, saying it would save us time, that it was safer to have a second one, and then, this part really made my stomach churn. He said only one of us needed to come with him if we were worried about going together.
Yeah, no. At that point, I'll be like, look, you're going to keep bothering us, we'll get the sheriff involved and see what he would say about that. Because if he said only one of you have to come, then I know he's probably going to end up kidnapping one of them. But at that point, I'll be like getting annoyed.
That was the moment I stopped pretending to be polite. I told him we were good, loud enough for the outdoor worker to hear. Thankfully, the guy came over and immediately told him to get lost. Literally told him to fuck off and stop harassing people. The man just gave us one last look, got back in his truck, and peeled out of the lot. No plate on the back of that truck either, which definitely didn't help the uneasy feeling that stuck with us after. A couple weeks later, while filling up our tank again, one of the employees asked if we'd ever seen that guy since. Apparently, he shows up every winter, always looking for young couples to talk to, and always offering to help them. Creepy doesn't even begin to cover it.
Mm-hmm. I had a bad feeling that if they had complied with him, he probably would have killed her husband and then do something nasty with her. But thankfully, they shouted out real loud that they were good in the work or told him to pretty much piss off and go and stop leaving them alone. Stop bothering them. I would do that too if I was working there at that store. And of course, he didn't have no license plate on his truck because he don't want to be found, it seems like. But I'm surprised that no sheriff deputy hasn't pulled him over for that.
The summer before I became a junior in high school, I signed up for this wilderness program through the same summer camp I'd been going to for years. Instead of the usual cabins and lakeside games, this version had us hiking a chunk of the Appalachian Trail over 2 weeks. I was all in. I'd always loved the outdoors, and it sounded like an adventure I'd never forget. There were 11 of us total, 9 girls around my age, and 2 female counselors who were a few years older, but still young enough to joke around with us and not seem like authority figures. About 4 days into the trip, We stopped near this water spigot just off the trail to take a break and have some lunch. It was a quiet spot, shaded, with a gravel road running nearby that occasionally had cars pass through. While we were all snacking and chatting, someone pointed out a white van driving slowly up and down the same short stretch of road, like not just passing through, but circling back, turning around, and doing it again. It looked kind of like one of those run-down work vans you'd expect to see full of tools and ladders, but something about how it kept reappearing had everyone a bit uneasy. Eventually, the van pulled over and rolled right up onto the trail, just a short distance from where we were sitting. It idled there for a minute, and then the driver, this sweaty guy in his 40s wearing a half-buttoned shirt and jeans that didn't quite fit, suddenly jumped out and came running toward us, waving his arms and shouting, "Does anyone here know CPR? My half-brother's having a seizure." Without hesitating, both counselors stood up and sprinted toward his van, I think purely out of instinct. Meanwhile, the rest of us just sat there frozen. It took us a second to process what had just happened. One girl quietly said, "Wait, didn't we see that van like 3 times already?" Someone else added, "Why would he say half-brother in an emergency?" That was when we all kind of looked at each other and realized this wasn't feeling like a legit situation. The counselors came back a few minutes later. Their expressions were totally blank, like they were processing something strange but didn't know how to explain it. We tried asking them questions. Was someone actually in the van? Or what happened? But they didn't really answer, just told us to finish our food so we could get moving again. That's when the man walked back over, holding one of those Halloween lawn decorations shaped like a little boy in a costume. Only this one wasn't holding candy or anything. It was just a plastic kid with weird eyes. He stood there with it, staring at us for a second, and then said, completely out of nowhere, "My puppet here really likes girls." Then he pressed some button on its foot like it was supposed to talk, but it just made a crackling sound and said something robotic that none of us could understand. Nobody said a word. We all just sat there chewing in silence, avoiding eye contact, pretending we weren't as freaked out as we were. Eventually, he gave up trying to get our attention, went back to his van, left the door open, and cranked up music that sounded like it came from a horror movie soundtrack. He stayed parked there for way too long, not doing anything, just staring out from the driver's seat like he was waiting. Finally, after what felt like a year, he drove off without saying anything. As soon as the van was out of sight, the counselors told us to pack up, and I don't think I've ever seen a group of people move so fast. We got back on the trail without finishing lunch, and didn't stop hiking for hours after that.
Okay, that is a little weird. If the kids said they saw that white van before, and then it automatically stopped and the guy ran out saying, "Help, help, my half-brother's having a seizure," that'd be a little off. And then when the counselors go to help, and then they come back pale-faced, they either probably saw that puppet that he brought over to him, or there's an actual dead guy in the back seat and he just wanted to terrify him with it. I don't know. I wish they clarified what happened, but they didn't tell him, obviously, to scare him out. But thankfully, that guy just decided to give up and leave, and then they packed up and continued on their hiking thing. I never saw him again. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Midnight Tales reactions like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. That's a wrap. Have a nice day.